From the beginning, I felt like I was being sucked into a black hole. I had expected Muslim testimony from the 7th century, but there's nothing there. I can't find anything. There's a problem here. You're delving into the origins of Muslims' deepest beliefs, but where is the historical evidence?
Sometimes the belief of the believer and the understanding of the scholar cannot be squared.
It's a choice between doing history and not doing history. And so I do the history even though it may hurt people.
Professor, can someone like myself who is not a Muslim and who does not believe that God spoke to Muhammad ever hope to fathom the truth of the origins of Islam?
No. Bedouin Arabs, they're the margin of history during the Roman Empire. That through such a people, the whole of North Africa and Spain should be transformed in just a few decades, and a whole new civilization created within a century from China to France. And this is a historical fact.
No one doubts the conquests really took place. But the question is, was it because of Islam?
If you were a Christian or a Jew or follow of another religion for whom a similar reality exists, it'd be easier to make a jump. There's a very famous Arabic proverb which says, not being able to know something is no proof that it doesn't exist.
But making that jump, taking a leap of faith, isn't as easy as it sounds. In Western universities, historical research is all about skepticism and doubt.
There is a curtain as regards Muhammad that you can't get behind.
What do we know about him and his life?
Well, we know that he existed. We know that he was active somewhere in Arabia. We know that he's associated with the book, the Quran. He was the one who uttered it. But it doesn't get us to what actually happened, which is what, of course, a historian would like to reconstruct. We have absence of evidence. We have the Quran, and you can't tell the story of the basis of the Quran. We have various early non-Muslim sources. They don't add up to a story. We have nothing. We have this one book out of a nothing. There's complete darkness.
In most religions, the tradition was handed down through oral history for millennia. This is put aside. That was called positive history. The oral tradition is completely negated.
Well, oral tradition means that you remember what you want. Some of it must be history, and most of it is clearly not history. It's just that they have been reshaped, rethought. They have been taken out of their original context, serving new functions. They've been cleaned up by all kinds, or cleaned up or messed up, if you like, by all kinds of interests that people have in the memory.
If supposing there is no written text of the time of the Prophet mentioning his name, the same is true of Christ. The same is true of Moses. That doesn't mean anything because there's always the oral tradition.
Sometimes if you have other sources from other points of view, you can suddenly see what it is that's been changed, and then when you can see that, you can also see why it has changed. But because Islam arose in a relatively remote corner of the world, we don't have these checks. We don't yet have the key that can unlock the tradition.
Gradually in the West, for the intellectual elite, the sense of the sacred was lost. A tribal person in Africa or in the Amazon has a natural sense of the sacred, whereas a graduate student at Oxford probably doesn't. It's from the West that this kind of history came up. That is, reason is the ultimate decider and judge of the truth. But what I'm saying is that those are not going to really give you the reason that is logically satisfying.
Where do you think the likeliest place of its origin?
Well, that I don't know. That I don't know. I don't think I should speculate on that.
Okay, all right. Okay. My greatest fear is that I'm completely wrong. I do sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and think I've got it completely wrong.
Once the world is reduced to a mechanical world, then all other levels of reality lose their status as being real. And they're relegated to the realm of so-called superstition. And what is not seen is considered not to exist.
We have nothing. We have this one book out of a nothing. We don't have the key that can unlock the tradition.
But maybe that's the point. We're not supposed to unlock the tradition. God's message comes to a prophet. The prophet lives in a desert. There is no room for anyone else.
It's interesting that this rationalistic history is very weak in being able to provide causes for certain effects. Not being able to know something is no proof that it doesn't exist.
You begin by looking in the record, and all you find is emptiness. And you end up in the desert, and all you see is emptiness. But perhaps the emptiness is the answer. Maybe Mecca gave Islam what it most needed. A blank sheet where Muslims could put their prophet beyond the reach of history. Professor, do you think that what I am doing is complicit with the brute fact of Western imperialism, Western hegemony?
No, not necessarily. As long as you remain aware of what you're doing. If you come as a Western scholar or historian, and in all honesty, present what your worldview is, and let's say when I look at the Islamic world from this paradigm, this is what I see, and bring out why this is different from how Muslims see themselves, that I think is a very honest effort, and is a good effort. But if you try to act as a doctor to a child, take this medicine, is good for you, you don't know, you're eating the wrong thing, this is how it should be, that's where the problem begins. And the Muslim world is no longer going to accept that. The days when the British would bring scholars from England to teach Indians how to be Hindus and Muslims is finished. It's finished.
It's true, before I began, I did have preconceptions. I was brought up a Christian, but I was also brought up in an environment that questions everything. Studying ancient history is a process of paint stripping, tearing away stories that you want to believe the literal truth of. This is supposed to be Mount Sinai, where Moses saw the burning bush, where God gave him the 10 Commandments. But there's no historical evidence for any of this. Christian monastery, Roman fortifications, the old partnership, God and empire. Between them, they turned this place into Sinai. In my heart, I want to believe it, but my head won't let me.
We believed that there was a living tradition kept by the people here, that this is where God had revealed himself in an extraordinary way.
How much would it matter if it turned out that this wasn't the place where Moses had received the 10 Commandments?
But the spiritual encounter with God is more important. The reality is there, even if your eyes aren't open to see things in actuality. God is always present, but you're not aware of his presence.
Ultimately, the city of God matters more than the city of man.
Yes.
But as a historian, I have to presume that the city of God was built by man as well. I wanted to map the human past in human terms, to make a map that fits the facts. But I travelled to places where the maps revealed a heavenly plan, sacred lands, sacred places. A world where you don't have to believe in God to feel the power of God. This is the Promised Land. Some call it Israel, some call it Palestine. A land where Muslims, Christians, and Jews still fight over the story of a promise made by God to Abraham thousands of years ago. Was there really a promise? It's not for the historian to say. But the world believers make in the name of God, that is what history is about. Even today, more people die for visions of heaven than they ever do for historical facts. Stories that never happened can be infinitely more powerful than stories that did.